Advantage Athletic Therapy, personalized rehabilitation programs with a whole body approach. Enjoy the podcast.
Dave Scott Media with Barb from Healthy, Well, and Wise. It's the March show 2026. Barb, I think springtime is a good time to maybe talk about those visits that start when you have to get to the hospital or an emergency and sort of clarify some situations. And I'm not making any sense with this, am I? But what I'm trying to get at is that in your article this month, it reminded me of a couple hospital visits that I had and how things can go sideways pretty quick if you aren't aware of the situation or being proactive in some form to help yourself. I know that's a long reach. I'm not trying to give away anything on your story this month, so I'll just let you take it from there and see if you can fill in the blanks.
All right. All right. So, the concept of each of us having kind of autonomy over our health and making sure that people really understand that the gist of that is not that we have the wisdom and capability within ourselves that surpasses other health professionals. Of course not. But when we look at the system as it is today and the frustration level of people, the wait times, to see a doctor, get, seen in an emergency room and things like that. There's so much globally in our societies that are considered a little more affluent that the reason that you're there isn't because of a car accident. It's not because you've had a tree fall on you. It's essentially things that if you were doing life differently, you wouldn't be there in the first place, putting a further burden on a system that's already straining at the seams. So it's looking at our responsibility as individuals. And there are a lot of people that are more than happy to pick that ball up and run with it. And then there is a larger segment of the population that they just need the tools. They need the supportive learning and to flex how they can bring those behaviors into their everyday so that they're supporting their bodies, so that they're not more prone to a chronic disease. And then those acute visits where, somebody really needs to be seen quickly, there's not this burden of people that actually don't belong in emergency medicine, that it's just something they've put off too long. And not everybody wants that responsibility, but I do personally believe from what I see that more people want it than don't. And there's a financial aspect to it, especially as people do indicate that they're struggling a little bit more with money these days. So you want your dollars to count the most. No different than we want our nutrition to count the most, our physical activity to count for the most, our sleep quality. And so those different wellness and lifestyle strategies that are actually the rocket fuel for us and help us not need that same medical care and, just learning not to contribute to dysfunction, but actually to the things that can help us thrive.
I think enough people I think people need to look at what you do and sort of understand where they need to get to first, because I think a lot of times we get sick and then we go. Well, we need to be more proactive on the other end of this so that you're not always sick, or you don't have these reoccurring problems, but sort of invest in yourself, invest in your own health. And I think that's something that a pill doesn't solve everything. You got to solve your own problems. Sometimes you got to say, okay, I shouldn't eat that. I need to be, I shouldn't drink this. I shouldn't smoke that. You know what I mean? And I think that's where a lot of people
Sure.
get sort of lost. I think they're just afraid or unwilling to put the time in on their own. What do you think?
We play a lot of head games with ourselves. I think that there's a level of awareness, and a lot of the things that we do, we recognize that they're self-defeating, that we're actually punishing our bodies, that, our expectations and goals of where we want to be can't be met with the things that we're doing. So it's an invitation to investigate why. We can use excuses. There are millions and millions of excuses that, oh, it's the time, it's the energy, it's the cat threw up just as I was about to, we can find a lot of excuses, but
Yeah.
really we need to find the reason why. And with that awareness of why and what, then our health shifts really, really dramatically. Just the act of asking ourselves in the morning before we get up, body, what do you need from me today? What is it that, I can do for you? Because your body's doing it all for you, whether you're aware of it or not. And so when we bring that attention and awareness, it doesn't have to be something massive. We talk about this all the time, that those baby steps are critically important. But I think personally where a lot of the confusion comes in is rightfully so. Every professional has a scope of practice. And that's important because, you don't want a car mechanic treating a broken bone. We need the right people with the right training. We want the best to do these jobs, but we don't understand sometimes how that applies to ourselves. And as individuals, we don't even have a scope of practice, right? The whole world's our playground. So the choices that we make, they're driven by what we should be understanding about ourselves. And if we don't have any of that understanding of our own beings, then how can we explain that to the people that we're asking to help us? And again, it shifts that responsibility. But it's been so many years where that system's been different, very patriarchal, very, pedestal related, and you do as I say, and that's the way it is. But we need that interplay. We need that bridge established. You may need a variety of professionals to help because each individual with their high degree of training, it's like they all have their own personal magnifier or telescope, but it doesn't pivot anywhere. It just focuses on one thing. But that one thing is part of all of us. And so that's where we come in as individuals because we're the ones that know if something doesn't feel right or normal. And we have to find ways that we can convey that information so that we get, I get that there will be wait times. That's unfortunately
Yeah.
the way the world is these days. But as much as we can do for ourselves by fueling ourselves properly and all of the, getting time out in nature, sleeping properly, drinking enough water, just our thinking processes in general, surrounding ourselves with people that are supportive and loving, having time out where you can actually get your thoughts clear in your head instead of being bombarded all the time. All of those things are part of our health. And just recognizing that you're the most rich resource out there when it comes to your own health and not giving that responsibility away or pushing it on somebody else.
I think too, there's exactly, that was one of the areas I wanted to talk about because there is a misconception too that, and I found this has happened to me over the years is, um, unless somebody really, really knows you, like I was really lucky. My heart doctor really, really knew me well. So he
Yeah.
totally understood me and knew there was a problem because he went, "Oh, you're active all the time. This isn't right." I was lucky
Mhm.
because I don't know if a
Yes.
regular doctor would have looked at it that way. You know what I mean? Not, and I shouldn't say
Hmm.
that because I don't know, but you are your own advocate. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
if you take that initiative, and there was one other area when we were talking about this that I wrote down a note. You're either, I find myself more often than not nowadays in a recovery mode from an injury doing exercise. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So it's something
Yeah.
self-inflicted. My problem will be is I want to go back sooner. I don't want to take the time for it to heal. I'm kind of that over recovery guy. I don't want to, be messing with that recovery pain. I just want to go do it. And then you get the other side where I don't want to say unmotivated, but the person that just doesn't see the need to exercise or doesn't want to feel that little bit of ache and pain to get that body working right again. So I think it gets kind of divided. And I think when you see a doctor, they don't know which side you're on. That's what I've learned. You can be in great shape and they can still say, well, you got to exercise. Well, I am. My weight's good. I eat healthy.
Mhm.
So I think you really got to be your own advocate. And I've learned that the hard way through a couple, big incidents is like, no, this is what's wrong with me. Just hear me out, right? Sort of,
Yeah.
would you look at this lane to see, I guess. And you're totally right on that. And I think that when you start to take care of yourself first, meaning eating right, sleeping, and exercising, those three things help you when you're
Yeah.
at that doctor's office because suddenly you're in charge of you. They're not in charge of you.
Yeah.
And I found that that was a big step for me was like, no, 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 no. You don't know me. Let me explain,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's a critical
Yes.
point. And there's great doctors out there and nurses, unbelievable. But I think, folks,
Yeah,
you got to make them aware. I mean, what
you
you
do.
are going through or what's happening so that they can
Mhm.
understand too. Because there's so much, like you said, if you're looking at that you're looking at that lens, so that microscope, and it's only one little area, but your life is a big area to sort of for that doctor to understand in that moment. So yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. So how do you enter this picture? What can you do to help people?
So, first and foremost, I'm neutral ground and I'm the ears and then the person that helps you analyze what direction is best for you and help you implement those different steps. And sometimes it's somebody with a scope that's more expansive than mine and, explaining, okay, this is what you and I can work on together, but this is actually what you need. And so this person might be a better fit, or this and this person will help to complement what I do. But it's that the very basics and it's looking at every aspect of holistic wellness, whether it's your nutrition, whether it's issues that you're having just navigating the stress that's in your life, because everybody's got stress. It's the biggest culprit in stealing our health. Doesn't matter what you're eating, what you're drinking, what supplements you take, any of those other things. If we are not managing the trash pandas loose in our brains in a healthy manner, then that's going to have the biggest detrimental effect on ourselves. So it's understanding where our sticking points are. It's understanding where those old injuries are, whether it's traumas, physical, emotional, anything like that. But it's knowing you, it's knowing what your normal is, and then if everything that you've been doing that was working suddenly isn't working, then this is where we go, what changed? What's different? Oftentimes we just attribute that to the aging process. That's actually rarely the case. There are other factors at play. So it's looking at all aspects. It's looking at what the person's motivation is, what level of responsibility that they want for themselves, seeing who else we need to bring to the table, and then just taking those baby steps quite simply to say, hey, this week have 5 more minutes of activity. Not saying go grab a gym membership and go,
Yeah.
5 times a week. I'm just saying, hey, do you think that this week you could manage walking up and down the stairs twice more than you do in the average day, or getting outside and just sitting and breathing, allowing yourself to feel what that actually feels like to just sit quietly with yourself and allow yourself to breathe, because most of the things that are going to make the biggest impact on our health are usually free. So it's a crazy concept, but people want to pay for something. They don't always want to say, hey, this change has to start with me. And yet it absolutely has to start with us.
We all want the one fix, one pill fixes everything. One person can fix everything. That's not the way it is. I do want to, and I want to bring this back up because we talked about this about a year ago. And just because I don't think people understand what you do as far as the process, you literally have a meeting first and go over their history. Like that's one thing
Yeah.
so I appreciate is you try and get all that information as much as you can about that person because that's going to tell you so much more about them where it's not like a 10-minute, in and out visit to a doctor. You're saying, no, no, tell me all this. I need to know all this. Like,
Yeah.
let's find out who you are, both physically and mentally, right? As you prepare to make
Yeah.
help them make the right choices for their future.
Yeah. Yeah. The initial consult is typically 1.5 hours.
Yeah.
And prior to that consult, there is an intake form. It's only 3 pages. It's not super in depth, but it's what that intake form is allowing people to do is organize their own thoughts and then prioritize as they see fit. They bring that with them to the consultation. It's not something I get days ahead of time. I learned years ago that by the time they get to my office, it's usually maybe one of the three things that they've written down as priorities are actually relevant in what they wanted to address. But it
Yeah.
it just puts that process in motion. And it's about relationships too. If somebody comes in and they don't feel any connection, then maybe I'm not the right person for them, but it doesn't mean there's not somebody else out there that truly is the person that can help them, work through things. So, sometimes we'll do an initial 15-minute call just to see, hey, are we the right fit for each other?
Yeah.
Because if it's somebody that wants to book and essentially just wants me to move into their house and clean their pantry and do their cooking, and it's like, hey, sorry,
Wrong
I'm not
person.
your person. I got my own stuff to look after that way. But I am 100%. If you're on board, then I am 100% the person that wants to be there for you to help you discover those things about yourself and to see how wondrous your body's own healing process is. And it lights me up to just the nth degree when I see people have these aha moments
Yeah.
and to realize the power within themselves. But it isn't, a secular thing. It's not, it's a community that we need. And so I really like to help people put those building blocks all together to build that proper foundation for themselves with their wellness and invite them in to see exactly what their bodies are capable of.
Well, and you answer the right type of questions and give the right answers, which uncover other situations that they probably weren't aware of, right, in their life that
Right.
maybe it were
Right.
affecting. And I think that's the other part that people,
Hmm.
we get caught up or hung up on one thing, not realizing it was
Yeah.
something else that's holding us back, maybe from doing those exercises or, you
Yeah.
know, and I think that's important too, that people understand that, it's for life. It's a game changer when you decide to make
Yeah.
those commitments, but it is a
It
lifelong
is.
commitment. It just never stops. You've got to keep working through it as each stage of your life approaches and understand what's coming. If you understand what's coming next, you can prepare much better. Right?
Hmm.
Great
And
conversation.
it's yeah, yeah. It I hope it gets people thinking. I hope that it excites them about their own potential and just to help them begin that process because that frustration with our overburdened system, that's not
Yeah.
going to go away.
No, it's
So
not.
then what? Then what do we do?
Yeah.
And this is where we really need to lean into, whether it's somebody's supplements and they need guidance on which ones are the best, what the therapeutic balance for those is, what can and can't be mixed with different prescription
Yeah.
medications they're on, the timing of those supplements. All of those things are part of what I'm able to offer in a consultation as well after 35 years in this field, 18 years of that in integrative pharmacies with amazing teams. uh, it's nice to have that bandwidth of experience and just to see the successes people have had that they've been able to power under their own steam just with some direction.
Cool. Thanks for doing this today. Wonderful conversation, folks. Give Barb a call. Even if you have just a few questions, let Barb help you out, get you started on the right path. And it's baby steps. You can do it,
Yeah,
folks. We believe in you. Thanks, Barb.
you're welcome, Dave.